I switched from the 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro to the 2020 MacBook Pro 13 with the Apple M1 chip. And I'm going to share my experience with you and tell you if you should do it too and what are the things that I have been experiencing after I switched. What are the pros, what are the cons, what do I miss, what do I like more about this. Everything will be in this particular video. But before we get started, my name is Sumukh, you're watching TechPP.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to watch more such content. However, we mostly upload videos in Hindi. So if you do not understand Hindi or do not watch tech videos in Hindi, you can leave without subscribing. I mean, watch the entire video, this particular one, but you need not subscribe. Well, that being out of the way, let's get straight into the video. First things first, you're not going to see any benchmark or numbers or anything of that sort in this video. This is just going to be primarily my experience while I was using the 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro and now my experience using the 13-inch one with the M1 chip and what differences I've been noticing between both these computers. Now first up, of course, it's the build and the design and just overall how it feels in the hand or on your lap while you're using it or on your backpack while you're traveling. Basically the 15-inch one is of course heavier and it was also thicker. Now Apple did cut down on the thickness and the weight with the newer gen MacBooks from 2016 onwards. And this particular one, the 2021, also is lighter and slimmer. And of course, since it's 13-inch, it's much more compact than what my 15-inch MacBook used to be. Now, I personally am a fan of smaller laptops because they are more compact and you can travel with them easier. So I really like the design and the overall build of the MacBook Pro 13 and I would pick it over the 15-inch one if I had the option. The reason I went for the 15-inch in the first place was because of that dedicated graphics chip and a quad-core processor which wasn't there on the 13-inch. Now of course the newer Intel one did have a quad-core chip, but I did not want to spend and I waited and I got the M1. And of course I'm happy with the build quality aspect of it because that's what this section is all about. I also love the new space gray color and the trackpad is larger on this particular unit compared to what my 15-inch had, and also the keyboard has slightly lesser key travel. I would have preferred the key travel on the 15-inch one because I was used to that. I will get used to this as well, but yeah, the scissor switches are good, just that the key travel could have been slightly better. The display is very similar to my 2015 15-inch, of course it's smaller, but the quality of the panel is very good. It's a 2K Retina panel with support for DCI-P3 color gamut. The colors look really nice and True Tone is an added benefit which wasn't there on the 2015 one. And overall the display is very enjoyable. Even if you're watching content or you're editing videos or photos, any of that sort, you are going to really like the display. Now I do miss the ports. I was speaking about video editing just now and that requires me to put in an SD card from my camera onto the laptop, but unfortunately the port is not there. We only get two USB-C ports which are Thunderbolt 3 USB 4 ports on the left hand side and a headphone jack of course. Now you can plug in external dongles, which of course I have been doing too, and there's just no way around it. You have to settle for what you get. I really wish there was an SD card slot on the new MacBooks as well. While I'm on the topic of ports, I do miss MagSafe. Now I'm talking about the Mac MagSafe and not the new iPhone MagSafe. It was convenient, however I do believe that Type-C is more universal and I can use a lot more cables and adapters now. I could even use a power bank with the Mac, which makes it better. So yeah, that's that. Apple has also introduced studio quality mics with the new 13-inch MacBook Pro, and while the webcam still remains at 720p, the quality is better because Apple claims that the M1 chip has better ISPs, which in turn help it produce better video quality using the same camera, and I do agree it does seem better to a certain extent. One thing that's not necessarily better than the 15-inch one from 2015 are the speakers. Now, given that was a 15-inch, the size, the physical size of the speakers themselves were bigger on that particular laptop and they're smaller on this one. However, the sound quality is actually quite good. It's just that it's not as loud as the 15-inch from 2015. Now, I primarily listen to stuff using earphones, so speakers are not of very high importance to me. If they are to you, you are going to be you're going to be listening to slightly lower volume levels, but that shouldn't really be an issue. I spoke about the keyboard, but I did not speak about the touch bar. Now, the touch bar is actually very controversial. A lot of people seem to hate it, and I went in with no expectations because I hadn't used a Mac with a touch bar before. The old 2015 one had function keys, but I was pleasantly surprised with the functionality of the touch bar. I personally seem to like it a lot. At least my initial impressions are that I use it a lot while I'm texting to add emojis because it's just easier that way, and I also tend to take some screenshots a lot, and again I use the touch bar for that. Also, seeking while playing videos, that is very convenient, and also switching tabs while I'm browsing. I feel, at least as of now, the touch bar is very convenient for my use case, even in Final Cut Pro, to add shortcuts to trim or for the blade tool or selection tool, whatever it is you want to switch tools. I feel it's convenient. These are my initial impressions, and of course it is accompanied by the Touch ID sensor, and that is also really nice. My previous Mac did not have it. I had to enter the pin every time. Now I just need to scan my fingerprint. Now, coming to the main aspect which probably all of you clicked on this video for, and that's the performance. Now, before we move on to core performance of the laptop, I would just tell you that I picked up the 8 plus 256 config, which is the base variant, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, and my previous MacBook 15 from 2015 had 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, which is basically double that of what I currently got on the new MacBook. Now, I got the base config because I did not want to spend more than what the base variant costed. I could boost up the RAM to 16, but I chose not to. Storage can be tackled by using an external SSD, which I did purchase one from WD. It was slightly cheaper than the Samsung T7, and the speeds were similar, so I just ended up going with the WD. Now, of course, RAM cannot be expanded in that particular fashion. You are stuck with what you go for. So if you can extend your budget, I would say get the 16 gig RAM variant, but I'll tell you my experience with the 8 gig model that I have. So right off the bat, the performance on the 13-inch 2020 MacBook with the M1 chip is better than the i7 variant of the 15-inch MacBook Pro that I had from 2015. Now, that particular laptop had the 4th gen Intel Haswell chips. Those were actually very, very powerful chips, and it still holds pretty good in 2020. I mean, that's the reason Apple stuck with it for, I think, 3 years from 2012 to 2015. And those are capable chips. I'm not again going to speak about Cinebench or Geekbench or any of that sort. Just that in my usage, even the i7 from 2015, I mean from much before that, the 4th gen i7 on the 2015 15-inch was performing quite well. However, the M1 chip does outperform the i7 one on the MacBook Pro 2015, not just in terms of raw performance, but also in terms of thermals. Primarily, if you launch or if you use Apple's native apps, including Final Cut Pro or Logic Pro, you are going to notice a considerable amount of difference. The apps launch faster, they perform better, smoother, and they just do not lag or hang while you're using them, and there are no unexpected force closes or anything as such either. Surprisingly, this also continues to other third-party apps like Microsoft Office apps or even browsers like Chrome. I did not expect that, but Rosetta 2 runs quite well, and it also feels faster than my older MacBook, and it's not yet optimized, so that says a lot about the M1 chip once those apps are optimized. Of course, Chrome is optimized, a lot of other apps aren't. So once those are optimized, they'll probably perform even better if you use the Adobe suite like Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc. Those are not optimized yet, and once they are optimized, they will perform better than what they are now, and they're already performing better than my 2015 15-inch, and that's promising. My primary use case is editing videos on Final Cut Pro, and that experience is really smooth on the M1 Mac. Now it was smooth even on my 2015 MacBook Pro. However, it's just better over here because there aren't any lags or frame drops whatsoever. I edit 1080p videos only. However, if you do edit 4K or even 8K, you shouldn't face much of an issue on the M1 Mac. Be it scrolling through the timeline or while you're exporting, adding effects, color grading, you will not have any issues or slowdowns. And even while I was running Chrome with a couple of tabs, and you know how RAM intensive Chrome is, I did not face any slowdowns and I was easily able to switch between the two applications. I also had WhatsApp Web and some other apps also running in the background. Speaking about render times, the 15-inch 2015 MacBook Pro rendered about a 15-minute clip on Final Cut Pro 1080p 24 FPS in 3 minutes and 36 seconds, while the M1 MacBook Pro 2020 with the 13-inch model took 2 minutes and 42 seconds. So it's almost about a minute difference, and trust me, the 2015 one is actually quite good. The time that it got is not too bad. However, the M1 Mac beat it, which was of course expected. And this difference, which is basically 1 minute, is going to increase as and when you bump up the resolution and the frame rate. So if you edit 4K 60, you are going to see better performance on the M1 Mac compared to the 2015 MacBook Pro. It's not just about the render times, but the M1 13-inch stays very cool while rendering and the fan does not turn on at all. On the other hand, the 2015 15-inch goes crazy with the fans in full speed, and it also gets really hot to the touch. And that way your experience is going to be much better with the 13-inch M1 compared to the 15-inch 2015 MacBook Pro. As I mentioned earlier, I like compact laptops, and the reason I picked up the 15-inch one in the first place was because of that dedicated graphic chip. And I do not notice any difference without it with the M1 Mac, and I'm glad that I can now have a smaller laptop with performance that's even better than a bigger laptop that I had. Now, another highlight apart from performance gains on the M1 chip is battery efficiency, and boy is it true. The 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro that I had to charge it about 3 or 4 times a day for my kind of usage, and the M1 13-inch that I have right now, I just need to charge it once in 2 days. Yes, it's that good. And I also did an overnight drain test. So the 2015 15-inch that I had, I just closed the lid. I do not usually shut down my Mac. I just close the top and go to bed, and I open it back up the next morning. And when I did that, it lost about 7 to 8% overnight on an average. And this guy over here lost a grand total of 1% overnight, which is crazy. So yeah, battery life is also great on the new M1 MacBook Pro. You will not have to charge it at least throughout the day. If you have a long day ahead of you, be rest assured that you will not have to carry your charger along. To summarize, the new 13-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 chip in 2020 does everything that I wanted to. I did not come across any unsupported apps that I personally use. However, it might be different for your use case. Again, if you use the Adobe suite of apps, it's not optimized yet. And from what I've been hearing from a couple of friends and other people in the industry is that the render times and just the overall experience of using Premiere Pro or Photoshop isn't very good and smooth as of yet. So you might want to wait for optimized versions of those apps before you make the switch. And those apps may perform even better on the 2015 15-inch as of now, since those apps are not optimized for the M1 chip yet. However, for my use case, as I said, again, I'm just reiterating this, my use case includes Final Cut Pro, Microsoft Office Suite, basically Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Chrome. I do not like Safari. I use Google Chrome, and I also use some photo editing software, or I also use Logic Pro. Basically not something that's fixed. I keep alternating, and of course you also get iOS app support on macOS Big Sur with this particular Mac. So that's that. For my use case, I do not have any issues with the. And while I was raving about the battery efficiency on the Mac, the battery on my camera just died. So I'm just going to finish this video using the front facing camera on the iPhone 12 mini. I mean, that was unnecessary of me to mention. However, to summarize, basically everything that I use on this particular Mac works fine. So if your use case matches mine, you can go ahead and get it right now, or else wait for the apps that you use to get optimized for the M1 chip, and then you can go ahead and purchase it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will answer them. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and share it with your friends and family. Hope you like this video. I'll see you around in the next one. Hope to catch you there. Bye bye.